So we are exploiting these last few minutes just to look back to what we have been learning. And throughout the talks of this morning and this afternoon, let's say. And I'll quickly start with my summary. I mean, of course, personal view, and then Erik would add his own words somehow. So throughout the talks, we really crossed a lot of different topics. And I would say we have been looking at very different ways by which mobility is actually studied, but also solved somehow. And possible ways to solve costs or management of infrastructure or reactiveness and or integration between different systems in a sense. From a more technical point of view, let's say, I've been looking at a lot of ways in which we have data, but we don't know how to use it properly. So let's say how to format it in a sense, how to get good examples, but also the big challenge of how to get bad examples. And let's say I would put also the ugly examples, all the things that somehow define these categories, if it's easy to find the examples we need or not at all. And that, of course, changes a lot in the various disciplines. Let's say if you're talking about humans, if you're talking about vehicles, if you're talking about systems that work anyway, and processes. So in a sense, we have been looking at processes for which we have data, but we try to understand what the process actually is. Think about the signal, time to green. Processes by which we have no data, so actually we have to understand what's going on. Things for which we have social norms here. So let's say we have things that it's rather difficult to explain in words, like the interaction between people and machines that we've been looking at this morning. And I see, let's say, in a future point of view, still a lot of things open there. Let's say it's easy to get the data to some extent, but how to get good actions out of it, at least in an academic paper, is still quite an open challenge. I suppose all of us have been playing a bit with this. For those of us that have been so lucky to implement their own ideas, and a few of the speakers actually managed to do this, we have been reflecting on how difficult it was or how challenging it was, and how somehow going back and forward, let's say, in the motivation scale, which tools are actually used, and probably in this sense, this is a kind of a good venue to understand from lessons to not make the same mistakes. But also it's still difficult to understand what is the value, what is the business impact, and even to the fact that we were talking about this morning that we would also like to understand the business value for things that didn't happen. So let's say kind of the negative treatment case, and that's always not super easy, especially if the world keeps changing so fast as we actually witnessed there. So that was more or less my takeaway from this. So a lot of things we have seen possible, a lot of things inspiring, but still a lot of things to do somehow that pertain all this information, scheduling, interacting with people, with processes, with maintenance, or things that don't go as they're supposed to be, sharing, and a lot of agents of very different types. And that I'll leave it to Erik to close this.
Thank you. So you blame me for keeping people from beer. So I'll just try to add a little bit and keep it short. So I was highly impressed by all the speakers today and the stuff that was presented. And what I really liked was the mix from looking at the academic challenges that are still there and that they are interesting in their own right. We have very complex problems we still need to solve, and AI offers tools where we could advance in fields where we couldn't maybe earlier. But then in the afternoon, we also saw implications it has in industrial applications. We heard it in the morning. Yes, when you want to apply it at industry, you have to take pragmatic solutions. I think the SPB use cases very nicely showed how you can really make these models work in a pragmatic way, starting from a small use case and scaling it up slowly. So for that, I really like this venue where we can find the connection between academia and industry and talk about difficulties we have on both sides, start the conversations, and really trying to move this forward. I was also impressed to see we had, on all the levels we talked in the morning, like the transport vehicles, we saw discussions there. We saw on the human level, interactions between humans, machines, trying to understand what the social prediction, what are humans going to do, we need to know that, and on the infrastructure level. And the important part, I think, is that it's all interconnected. We cannot look at one single part of this problem, but we have to understand how they play together. And there is where I see the big hope, and I hope from tracks like these and other conferences, we really come together and envision different forms of mobility of the future, where we really leverage the benefits of technology advancing and also very clever minds coming up with how can we do things differently than we did before. Because in preparation for this track, I got really frustrated seeing the left part of this slide. I'm like, okay, 1.2 person per car, 30% of people in the public transport, and we produce in Switzerland 40% of the CO2 with that. So, I mean, that cannot be the final solution, right? So we're very clever people in one room, so let's come together and come up on how to solve that we can still travel. We all like it. I think it's important for humans to travel. That needs to stay. The bad part needs to go away. But pretty sure we'll manage a lot of promising stuff here today. So on that, I'd like to close and thank you all, the speakers and the audience, for participating, and looking forward for many more interesting discussions. Hopefully there's beer now before the session so we can have further discussion. Thank you very much.